Good evening, I'm Wendy Mesley, and this is The National.
Well, there's a lot of good paying quality jobs. Slowly and surely we see them, going south.
An Ontario town reels as GM exports hundreds of jobs, while another auto centre is booming. But for how long? Tensions around the fairness of free trade have started a war of words between Mexico and the U.S. But today, it's Canada feeling a real sting after news General Motors will move hundreds of jobs from Ontario to Mexico. 625 positions will be cut from one of GM's most productive plants, one that employs nearly 3,000 people. The layoffs are a big blow to the city of Ingersoll. That's where Ron Charles is with our story.
The announcement that GM will shed a quarter of its workforce at this plant came as a surprise to many workers here.
I didn't think it was going to happen. I was kind of shocked, really.
There's a lot of good paying quality jobs that should be here in Canada, but, slowly and surely we see them, going south of the border.
That's what's worrying to their union. GM's decision to ship production of the GMC Terrain, one of the plant's two vehicles, to Mexico. Union leaders blame trade agreements like NAFTA, and they welcome Canada's offer to renegotiate it after Donald Trump's threat to tear it up.
Renegotiating some type of trade agreement will hopefully lead to better job security in Canada.
The timing of the GM job cuts and production shift to Mexico adds pressure on Justin Trudeau as he prepares to talk trade with Trump. His economic development minister says part of the plan is to continue promoting Canada as a good place to invest.
We've seen recently, over the past few months, over $2 billion being invested in our automotive sectors.
GM announced just 2 years ago an $800 million investment in this plant. Today, a company spokesperson said the automaker is still committed to investing in its Canadian facilities, just not for this vehicle.
It was previously announced with employees that the next generation GMC Terrain will be produced outside of CAMI. We have confirmed the production location to be Mexico.
The company announced the remaining 2,000 or so workers at the plant will produce the next generation of the successful Equinox. Auto industry experts say that at least tempers today's job cuts announcement.
It's not good news, but this is not devastating. And in the end, growth was pretty substantial in Canada's automotive industry in 2016.
Even though GM's original decision to move Terrain production to Mexico predates the U.S. election, confirming the decision during Trump's first week in office will almost certainly conflate the two. Ron Charles, CBC News, Ingersoll, Ontario.
Investment in Canadian auto plants can be a big lift to the industries around them. It can take a city that's seen hard times and revitalize it. From Ingersoll, we head to Windsor, Ontario, where good times are living under a shadow of protectionist talk. Havard Gould explains.
For years, it looked like Windsor's woes would never end. Now, Carla Samajaveri has all the construction work she can handle.
Very busy. Actually, we are non-stop. As soon as we're done a house, there's another house to build and another house to build.
If it just cools off a bit.
Ben Klundert's construction company is working flat out. He might be able to build more houses if he could get more skilled workers.
They're hard to find, but we could always use probably another 4 or 5 on that side.
Windsor's rebound started with Fiat Chrysler's massive minivan plant, where a $1 billion upgrade recently completed and more than 1,000 new jobs boosted confidence.
It's good. It's good for a change because, Windsor's been down for a long time.
2 years ago, the unemployment rate in Windsor was at times more than 11%. It's now less than 6%.
But even with the low unemployment and forecasts calling for high economic growth, there is fear here.
The city counts on the free flow of autos and auto parts back and forth between Canada and the U.S., a flow U.S. President Donald Trump has put in doubt with talk and tweets.
Windsor's back. Windsor's back.
The head of the area's Economic Development Corporation has plenty of reasons to be upbeat. But still, wondering what Donald Trump might do next keeps Stephen McKenzie up at night.
It's nerve-wracking. I guess human nature has a habit in a vacuum of, or not knowing the information to jump to the worst-case scenarios.
In that worst-case scenario, tariffs on the auto industry pop up, and Windsor spirals downwards. The risk is real, according to industry expert Tony Feria. But he believes that Trump or his advisors will realize that disrupting the highly integrated Canada-U.S. auto industry would immediately do damage on both sides of the border.
You don't want to willy-nilly do something that's where, in fact, you're promising to create U.S. jobs that may lose U.S. jobs.
So, for now, Windsor is booming. This local shopping mall is going to get a $70 million makeover. And there are even bidding wars breaking out for Windsor homes. A city that was down for so long, hoping its new direction doesn't change. Havard Gould, CBC News, Windsor, Ontario.
It's not just the auto industry that would be affected by a Trump import tax. Many U.S. businesses depend on Mexican trade. And today, from a small restaurant to a billionaire, there was pushback. Jacqueline Hansen has our story.
Xolo restaurant in Oakland, California is more than 700 kilometers from the Mexico border, but to owner Matthew Ridgway, that's no distance at all.
Things like tomatoes, avocados, onions, limes, all those things are supplemented from Mexico when we can't be producing them seasonally ourselves here in the United States.
Thank you very much.
But President Trump again today claimed the Mexico-U.S. trade relationship is entirely one-sided.
They've made us look foolish. We have a trade deficit of $60 billion with Mexico.
His new administration wants to change that and help pay for Trump's promised border wall at the same time. Trump still considers that 20% border tax as one possible solution. Former President of Mexico, Vicente Fox, is yet another voice doubting Trump will follow through.
I don't think he will do it because there is so much to lose for United States.
That's because Mexico wouldn't actually pay the tax. Companies selling Mexican goods in the U.S. would, which could end up costing American consumers. Some experts say the side effect could be lost jobs in both countries, and Canada could also suffer if a trade dispute slows down the U.S. economy.
Slapping on a tariff which produces a rise in consumer prices and a decline in employment in certain sectors is not going to be good for Canada.
This University of Toronto professor says Trump is making too much of America's trade imbalance with Mexico.
Trump is a businessman, and I think he probably thinks of the trade deficit as like the bottom line for your company. You're in the red. And countries are not companies. Countries can run trade deficits for a very long time and still do quite well.
Mexican businessman, billionaire, and one of the richest people in the world, Carlos Slim, tried to calm Mexicans' fears about Trump's policies. Trump is a great negotiator, he says, not a terminator.
But for now, Trump's hot rhetoric has everyone wondering if decades of free trade will soon be replaced by a trade war. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
General Motors announcing job cuts today in southern Ontario. It plans to lay off 600 workers from its Kami plant in Ingersoll. The union representing workers there say the news came as a shock.
We've been told all along that the numbers were there, that we were going to be producing this current model, the new generation model, and the train for into the future.
Earlier this month, the company said it would move production of the GMC Terrain to Mexico, but boost production of the Chevy Equinox at the Ingersoll plant. Now that's not the case. GM maintains it did give the union advance notice of the layoffs.